Al, I just hope I've got time to tell you this because it's the most tragic part of my entire life. I've been in some horrible situations in my lifetime and seen some rotten things, but this is the worst. This is the worst. And if you forget everything else I've told you, try to remember this and believe this. I have no reason to lie to you. There's no reason for me to come up here and create fiction or try to impress you with anything. I'm just going to tell you how it is. Just tell you how it is. This guy's dead. This guy hung himself in the Elgin State Hospital. He's buried in what they call a pauper cemetery at the Elgin State Hospital because nobody claimed his body. And he died very young. He died before he was even 40. A little over 40. Just for no reason at all, he died, really, except for booze. Al came to me when I was sober. He showed up at my house one Sunday wanting some help. Now, he wasn't really all that drunk. Now, he was no blood buddy of mine or anything like that. He's just a guy that I'd met in passing. I'd seen him around a few saloons. I'd seen him on Skid Row. I'd been in jail once when he was in jail, and he was in the state hospital once when I was there. And I just knew him, that's all. I knew nothing more than his name, really. And that's about how all alcoholics are. You don't really want to know anything more than just a name. And through the grapevine, he found out that I was on AA and that I was sober, and that I was working as a volunteer in a program at the Elgin State Hospital, and maybe I could get him in there. Now, in those days, they didn't have all these sophisticated programs like we have out here today, or any place. There was a time when hospitals wouldn't take you and I, not legitimate hospitals. And no matter how much money you had, they didn't want you. So our only places we could go to were the few private places that were around, and state mental institutions. And state mental institutions didn't have alcoholic programs in those days. You were just thrown into the same basket, but it had been stamped MI, mentally ill, And you stayed there anywhere from 30, 60, 90, whatever the hell a psychiatrist wanted to keep you there. Sometimes you could get yourself in a bad mess by signing into one of them as a volunteer, but a lot of alcoholics did. Well, the Elgin State Hospital was the first hospital in the state of Illinois to try a pilot program for treating alcoholics. They were going to separate the alcoholics from the mentally ill. So they established a ward called VDC-3, which meant Veterans Diagnostic Center number 3, and that was going to be the alcoholic unit, Only alcoholics were going to be on that ward. And they had a deal set up with volunteer workers like me, who were actually guys working on hospital and institutional committees for AA, and volunteers, that if on a weekend, if an alcoholic wanted to get admitted to the hospital, we could take him just on our own recognizance to the alcoholic ward, and he wouldn't have to go through any of the screening process. He wouldn't have to get put in with the mentally ill overnight or anything like that. They put him right on the alcoholic unit, just on our word. So Al had come to see me this one day, and believe me, he wasn't drunk. He didn't look all that bad. He didn't look good, but he didn't look all that bad. And he said he wanted to sign into that program because it was 90 days, and it was the middle of the winter. And he said the reason he wanted to go in was a reason I understood. He said, I've got no job, no place to go, and he says, it's cold out, and I can't sleep under the bridges or anything. So I might as well check in there for 90 days, then I'll come out with the Robins. Now, we used to say that all the time, I've done that, to get in out of the cold. But I thought it was such a waste because this new program, we all wanted it to succeed. They had some very strange rules in the beginning. One of the rules, which of course they've since changed, was that you'd only get one admission to that program. Once you went through it, you could never go through it again. That was the belief that they couldn't do anything for you, but that was foolish. And I thought it would be ridiculous for Al to use his admission up, when he really wasn't that bad. I was living by myself then in a whole house. I had a big old house with 7 bedrooms. And I told Al, I said, I'll tell you what. And I was the foreman on a job in a neighboring community called Dundee, Illinois. We put an addition on the Dundee High School. And we were inside for the winter. We had the roof on, the outside walls up. We put a lot of glazed tile and stuff like that inside, locker rooms and things. I said, Al, I can get you a job, Monday. I'll get you a permit with the laborers union, and you can be a laborer, Anybody can wheel concrete around or bricks or whatever the hell the bricklayers need. And I said, you can stay here in my house with me until you make a payday. Hell, I'll pack lunch for us and feed us this week, and then once you make a payday, you're on your own. Now, that kind of a deal is passed between men and women, I guess, a lot of times during the course of recovery. So it wasn't unique for me to do that. And he thanked me for it, and he was willing to try it. And so we sat around my house that whole Sunday, just shooting a bull. It was before television or anything, or at least I didn't have television. And we listened to the radio. It was the Chicago Bear game. It was in the snow or something, the last game of the season. And it was just a funny day. During the day, he kept doing a crossword puzzle that was in the Sunday section of the Chicago Tribune. The big one, the big Sunday special, I guess. And every now and then he'd ask me a question. What's a 5-letter word that means sloop or this or that? And I'd say something. He'd say, yeah, that fits. And that's how it went on the whole day. In between, I gave him a drink about every 4 hours, the same way I do here with you, just to slow him down a little bit. And then I got some food into him, began to eat. And about 10 o'clock that night, we had a great big pizza pie delivered in, and hell, he was just as sober as a judge. And we got finished the pizza, and I said, come on, it's time to go to bed. Let me show you where you're going to sleep. And he said, oh, I changed my mind. He said, I'd rather go out to the hospital. I could have killed him. I was really upset, I figured here I had wasted my whole damn day, taking care of this jerk, Now he wants to go to the damn hospital. I was just furious, resentment. And so I just said, get your coat and get in the goddamn truck and let's go. And I took him out to the state hospital, got out there about midnight. And we went up to BDC3. I rang the bell, and the attendants came. They knew who I was. And they took Alan. Down the hall he went into the clothing room and off into the wards, and I didn't see him. I hung around for maybe a half an hour, shot the bull with the guys on duty, and had a couple of cups of coffee and told a few jokes, a few lies, like people would do. And then I left and I went home. Now, when Al was going out there, because he had been in the state hospital before, and I had been, and any of you had been, you'd know what to do. He had about $30 on him. Well, if you check into the hospital with that kind of money, they'd take it off of you. And then they dole it out to you at the rate of about $2 a week, which isn't too good if you're smoking, 6 or 7 packs of cigarettes a week. It doesn't. So the secret is to give somebody else the money. And then after you get shook down and get admitted to the hospital, have the guy come back the next day and slip you the money. And that way you're walking around the state hospital with $30, $40 in your pocket. That's like having $500 in your pocket on the outside. So we had done that. He had given me whatever money he had. And he said, bring me out a carton of cigarettes tomorrow night. And I said, all right. The next day I went to work. It was a lousy old cold day, half snow and half rain, and just a pissy day. And I left work at 4:30, and I didn't have any windows in my truck, just getting started myself. I was cold and wet, and so I decided instead of going home and getting cleaned up and then going out to the state hospital, that I'd go right from work. So I stopped and I got a carton of cigarettes, whatever the hell kind it was. And I went out there and I rang the bell at BDC3, and the guy came to the door. I said, I want to see Al. He looked at his chart. He said, ain't nobody on the ward by the name of Al. And I said, well, you better look again. I said, I brought him in here at midnight last night. Oh, yeah, that guy. Yeah, they transferred him in the middle of the night. I said, they did. Now, it wasn't uncommon to transfer people who would get medically sick. On the alcoholic unit, there was no medications or no doctors on that unit. If you had a convulsion or a seizure or went into DTs or got pneumonia or needed medication, they transferred you over to the medical hospital part of the state hospital. And I figured, Jesus Christ, this guy had a convulsion, Never would have thought it would happen. Or he went into DTs maybe. And I just couldn't think. I said, where the hell is he, in the hospital? And the guy says, no, he's not in the hospital. And I said, well, where? He said, well, he's on A3 South. And that won't mean nothing to you, but I get goosebumps just saying it now. A3 South is a maximum security mental ward at the Elgin State Hospital. That's where they keep males who have vegetated, who have become what we call wet brain, who have no idea who they are, what they are, or where they are. I can describe the ward A3 South to the inch for you because I was a patient there twice. It's about as big as this room, maybe as wide as this room, a little bit longer. And there's no furniture, Nothing. There's nothing in there except a rubber tile floor. And about every 12 feet, I guess there's a floor drain. And that's it. That's all that's in that room. And most of the guys in that room have torn off their clothes, either themselves or torn off each other. They've rubbed their own excrement or other people's excrement all over their bodies. They eat excrement. They urinate wherever the hell they want to urinate, on whoever the hell they want to urinate on. They play in their urine, they play in their excrement. It's the worst place I've ever been in my life. Now, I wasn't there for any mental reasons. And I don't know if this is right or wrong. It makes no difference now. But way back in the early days, when there really wasn't any treatment process for alcoholics, doctors just initiated their own sort of programs. Some of them thought, that we had to be punished more than anything else. And to make things tough for us so we wouldn't drink again. They might have been right, I don't know. Well, the doctor that I had a set of rules that if you got caught while you was on the alcoholic unit breaking any of the rules, he would transfer you over to A3 South for 3 days. And you'd sit over there sane and sober for 3 days amongst what I've just described to you. I assure you, by the end of them 3 days before that, you're willing to obey any rule they got in that hospital to get the hell off of that ward. I assure you that. And twice I had been sent over there. Once because I got caught smoking in bed, which is a cardinal rule in the hospital. And the other time because I thought I was being cute. I had a guy bring me in a bottle of wine. And I got caught drinking the wine. And the doctor sent me over there twice. So I knew that ward. I'm not proud of what I'm going to tell you now, but you got to be honest. When I heard he was on A3 South, I wasn't the least bit sad. As a matter of fact, I was sort of happy. That resentment had built up in me from the prior day that I was glad he was over there. I envisioned him sitting there, sane and sober, around all of that stuff that I just told you about, And I couldn't wait to get over there to rub it in, and just say, there, that's good for you, I got over there and I went up the outside, which was an old-fashioned wire staircase. And I went in there and the guys there knew me. And I told them who I wanted to see. And they said, okay, now this is an old hospital. And the visiting there in that ward was just like in some of the old drunk tanks or visiting jails, where you have one wire cell here, walkway in between, and a wire box over there. And the visitor stands in here, and then pretty soon they go get the inmate or the patient, and they put them in the other box, and you just can talk, but you can't touch. So I stood in there for a couple of minutes, that's all, just waiting to give it to Al. And then they brought him in, and he had no clothes on. And he didn't know me, and he didn't know who he was. He didn't know where the hell he was, or what the hell he was. And he had either his own or somebody else's excrement all over his body, And he just looked at me, and I can, right to the pitch, I can imitate it because I heard it for almost 11 years. He just looked at me as though he had something caught in his throat. I couldn't stand that, and I got the hell out of there right then and there. And I remember going back to my place that night, saying to myself, boy, if this son of a bitch ever drinks again after he gets out of here, he's got to be crazy, What a story he's going to tell, Because I just figured this was a temporary thing. I went back the next night because it was a meeting night. There was 3 meetings there a week, and I went to all of them. And I went back to see how he was doing, and it was the same thing. And I went back on Wednesday, and I went back on Saturday, and I went back on Sunday, and I went every Sunday for about the next 6 years. And then I moved to California. I was out here, right here in Myrtledale, the second year that I was in Myrtledale. I was notified that either became real again or something happened because they found him in the clothing room hanging by his neck. The necktie. He hung himself. He had never come off of that ward. Never came off of that ward. He lived on that ward for 14 years. 14 years. And he's buried at the Elgin State Hospital because nobody knew who he was or wanted to know who the hell he was, I went back there I don't know. I went back and I saw the doctor who was in attendance when he died. On the birth certificate, they had it written. They told the truth. Early history of unattended acute alcoholism. That's what had killed him, got to tell you that when I had gone home that first night, after I'd seen him for the first time, as I walked up on my porch, I picked up the Monday night paper. I was sitting down in the living room, sort of glancing through the paper and thinking about Al at the same time. And as I was opening up the paper, I came upon that little square, usually down in the corner of the paper, that is the answer to the Sunday crossword puzzle. As I thought of the crossword puzzle, I looked across the room to where he had been sitting just the day before. And there in the paper rack was a Sunday section of the Chicago Tribune, the crossword puzzle. I don't know if it was out of just my sadistic nature or what, but I wanted to see how good he had done. And I compared the puzzle with the answers. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't too bad, though. Some of the places he had the words spelled wrong. Some places he didn't have words in that should have been in. It was just so-so. I'll tell you what it looked like. It looked like the crossword puzzles that we find around here in the morning that you do the day before. Just like that. Now this guy, as I said, when he came to my house that Sunday, didn't look as bad as some of you look right now. And he was a young man, only 32 years old, so he really hadn't been doing that much drinking in his life. But yet within a period of less than 24 hours, he was destined to spend the rest of his life as a vegetable, never knowing who the hell he was or where he was, only to come to reality one day and then hang himself, you know. Tricia never saw Skid Row, never saw a hospital. Died the first time she convulsed at home. Jimmy died in a convulsion. Ina died in a seizure. Jack was killed in an automobile accident in Waterman, Illinois.